Can you get this ready? Do you need to turn these lower?
It came up pretty bright last when we tested it, but I just want to make sure. Right? That looks pretty visible. I think that's it. Thicker.
Right now,
So you remember the middle? Yep.
Good evening, parents, educators, distinguished guests, students who are here tonight. My name is Joan Deem, and I am the president of the Hicksville Congress of Teachers, and I represent the education professionals in the Hicksville Public School District. I would like to welcome all of you tonight to a very frank discussion of the state of our education system and what is needed to provide our children and our students with the opportunities for success in the public school setting. Hicksville and its surrounding communities have long-standing traditions of excellence in their public schools, built upon the scores of families that have moved here to improve their lives through hard work and commitment to their neighborhoods and school communities. Many of the families in our neighborhoods are they themselves public employees and union members with generations serving in our police force, municipalities, and in our educational institutions. Working men and women on Long Island have always recognized the outstanding public schools that exist in our towns, which is why generation after generation of our students return to Hicksville, Levittown, and East Meadow to raise their families here. Unfortunately, the hard work of teachers, parents, and community members who serve on boards of education have been ignored by politicians who have until now chosen to ignore valid statistics and hold our education system hostage through the New York State budget process. Tying teacher evaluations, high-stakes testing, and student performance to school district budget is criminal. Our legislators should be focused on finding sources of revenue to improve the educational opportunities for our students, not making excuses for how to starve them of such. Students' rights, teachers' rights, workers' rights, these are all human rights, and we need to hold our state officials accountable. As parents, you know what is best for your children, and as teachers, we will support you in the decisions that you make on their behalf. Tonight, you will hear from an esteemed panel of educators, child advocates, union members, and parents who will help us to understand that we are at an educational crossroad and how your advocacy on behalf of your children is so important. Please welcome our first speaker, Mrs. Lori Kerner, a member of the Hicksville Congress of Teachers, a parent, and an education professional.
Thanks so much, Joan. Thank you for that introduction and those opening words. Thanks for being here tonight. I'm Lori Kerner, and we are united in a powerful shared vision of what we can do to assist our children in their education. Before we begin, I want you to take note that there are exits at the back of the room. You never know. We don't plan on any emergencies, but we want you to be prepared. Additionally, I really did want to make the point that obviously in education today there are varying views. And quite honestly, I think that's a wonderful thing. Even though there may be varying views, it's most important that we make sure that we come together in forums such as these to listen and learn from each other in order to make the best decisions and choices for the children. So that being said, my colleagues and I are honored to be with you tonight to share with you the information that we have regarding the changes that have been made in our system over the last few years. We're confident that when you leave tonight, you'll feel comfortable in making the best choices for your children and their education. I've had the opportunity over the last a little more than a quarter of a century to view education through multiple lenses. Having taught every grade on the elementary level and having the opportunity to serve as an administrator and as a professor of education, I've been able to see the varying changes through the years. But most importantly, I'm a mom, and I have 4 children, and I can tell you wholeheartedly that I've seen the changes in our system, both professionally and personally. And when we see things personally, we start to think, that doesn't feel right, that maybe needs to be changed. But once things hit us at home personally, we start to say, wow, we really have a problem here. And so I want to tell you a little bit about my story. My 2 oldest children have been through the system. That's Caitlin and my son Dylan. And anyone who knows my children know that my daughter has a passion for the arts, and she's toured the world with Disney Entertainment. And I share that with you because as a young child, she was always focused on the arts. And her teachers had the opportunity and the freedom to support her both in and out of the classroom. And I really believe that had she been in the system right now, she may not have had the opportunity to meet the success that she has in the arts today. My son, Dylan, is on a full scholarship in college, and I share that with you, not to be boastful in any way, but to let you know that the reason I believe he's on a scholarship is due to the dedication of his teachers. He loved learning. He loved being at school. And when children are happy in their environment, the success comes naturally, more naturally. So, thanks for nodding your head. Very kind of you. These are my 2 youngest children. They're in the elementary program now. Don't judge. And although these photos may appear to have been staged, the sad part of these photos is that they're not staged at all. So this is what goes on in a typical night in my home, which is why I tend to work late. But you can see Sean's face, and he's so over-focused on his work, and he really isn't enjoying his educational experience through no fault of his teachers. The 2 youngest ones have the same teachers that the older children had, because I requested that. And they're having a very different experience because of the way that our education system is set right now. I don't know if you can see the middle photo, but my older children can't help my 10-year-old daughter with her math homework. And I see that you're nodding your heads. How many people can relate to that type of situation? Thank you. But it's true, and it's so sad. And I took these photos because I couldn't believe how challenging the curriculum has become and how overwhelming it is for the children. And it breaks my heart having been in education for such a long time and watching my children not really enjoying their experience is absolutely heartbreaking. And the 3rd photo, I don't know how clear it is to you, but Sean's hands are actually over his head. And the tears that follow that photo are really indescribable. And I say that wholeheartedly from the bottom. It really is what goes on every day because the system has changed so much. And that's why I'm here. I'm here to share with you as a mom the experiences that I'm going through, and hopefully you'll be able to connect with that, and together we can determine what we can do for our children to make them lifelong learners. So the question that's come to the forefront recently is, well, how did we get to this place? Why did all of these changes come about? And it actually started in the 1980s with a report called A Nation at Risk. And basically what A Nation at Risk said was, SOS, we have a problem in our K-12 public schools, and we need change. We need more rigor and higher standards for our children. And the reality of A Nation at Risk, in looking back, is that it may have been a misunderstanding, if you will. We may not have been taking into consideration socioeconomic situations, culture, and children with special needs. So in hindsight, our system may not have been in such a poor situation back then. It might actually be a little worse now, if you will. So we really need to keep that in mind. In looking back, we may have been better off then than we are now. And the reason behind that is because before Nation at Risk, the federal government had played a minimal role in education. And after A Nation at Risk, the federal government became the main drivers of educational reform. So where's the problem in that situation? Right, exactly. The federal government, they're lawyers, and we're the educators. And we really do know what's best for our students and our children. Most of us in the room, I don't know how many people there are in education. I really do, because I see you all over there. But so many people in the room went into education back in the 80s, maybe, like me, because they loved learning and they were so happy and comfortable in their environment. And I can stand before you and tell you that that's not the case now. As a professor on the graduate level, we have very low enrollment in our teacher programs. So that's alarming, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Following A Nation at Risk, we had the No Child Left Behind Act, which said, we're going to help fix education. And here's how we're going to help. We're going to make sure that every child is proficient in ELA and math by 2014. And the way we're going to determine if the children are proficient in ELA and math is to give them a standardized test. So everybody will take the same test, and that will let us know the true indication of their knowledge. Now, any of us who have been in education or who may have had children or who know people who have children realize that every child is different, and every child has different needs. So if we give the same test to every child, regardless of their needs and their culture and their socioeconomic situation, we're not going to get an exact reading of what the children know and understand. When we talk about more rigor and higher standards in our curriculum, we really have to look at the word rigor and the meaning behind that word. And if you look at the definition, you'll see that rigor actually means strictness, severity, harshness, and inflexibility. And I know as an educator and a mom that those words are the farthest thing that I want from my children, both in the classroom and at home. So I'm a big fan of political cartoons, and I have found that this cartoon is a really great indication of what standardized testing has done to our children. So the quote says, everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. And unfortunately, this is what the system is creating for our children. You know, if we look at these different children and their varying needs, who's going to be successful? Who's going to be successful? Class participation? Yeah, absolutely. So does that mean that the other children are not knowledgeable and don't have any type of individual gifts? Absolutely not. Thank you, Nancy. Unfortunately, this political cartoon may look comical to you, but the sad reality is that this is what the classroom has become over the last few years with the implementation of standardized testing. And you can see that the children are saying, is this the test to prepare us for the test? To see if we're ready for the test. And that's not really what we want for our children. We want them to be out of the box, deep thinkers, and not necessarily teach them for a test. We learn that golden rule in our teacher prep programs. It's the first thing we teach our students. Never teach for a test. And test what you've taught. So my other question to you is, how can we prepare children to become college and career ready, whatever their career path may be, if they don't love learning when they're 8, 9, and 10 years old? So in order for us to prepare our children for lifelong learning, we really need to make sure that we grab them when they're young. Another one of my favorites. Sometimes the most brilliant and intelligent students do not shine in standardized tests because they don't have standardized minds. We've created a culture of standardization, and that's not really what we need to prepare our students and our children for a global society. We don't want to create standardization. The most solid foundation of a quality education, as I mentioned before, is to test what's been taught. So we really need to get away from this culture that has been created for us. And research has shown us, unfortunately, that what we know is going to be tested is what we're going to be teaching in the classroom. So those of you who are in the classroom, I'm wondering if you've noticed a narrowed curriculum, focused mainly on the ELA and math because of the system and the changes that have been made. So, we really need to consider the definition of the word assessment. The word assessment is derived from the Latin root assedere, which actually means to sit beside. And that's what we're supposed to do when we assess children. We're supposed to sit beside them and help them and encourage them and change the language and assist them in letting us know what they really understand. Assessment is necessary, and we look for it, we want it, and we need it, but it needs to be appropriate, and it needs to be varied according to each individual child's needs, especially children with special needs. And assessment should provide educators with immediate feedback on what a child knows, and it should determine the next steps in instruction. We also need to make sure that we use multiple measures when we're assessing children, various types of assessments. If a child has a written expressive language problem, we're not going to ask them to write an extended response to let us know what they understand. In the same way, if a child has a verbal speech challenge, we're not going to ask them to give an oral presentation to let us know what they really understand. That wouldn't give us a true picture of what a child really knows. So, we've had some unintended consequences for teachers and students based on the changes in our system. We have a narrow, fragmented curriculum. We have children leaving school, this is an article I recently actually read, with no knowledge of the arts, sciences, history, and geography. Ask your young children where they live. Ask them what country, what's it. It's really saddening to see that we have kind of gotten away from the deep knowledge of science and social studies, especially on the elementary level, because we are having to teach for the scores on the test. And any educator knows that that's not real knowledge. So what do we need? We need to get back to what we used to have. We need to get back to portfolio assessments, which really show us the true learning experience, evidence of growth in our children and in our students. We need a student-centered redesign of our educational system. Project-based learning, which Mr. Gamberg will speak about in just a few minutes. Teachers know when children are learning, and I think that you'll be able to connect with this. When you're teaching a child and you see that aha look in their face when the light bulb goes off, and they say, oh yeah, you can't take a snapshot of that and submit it to the state to prove your efficacy. Right? When you have 7, 8, and 9-year-olds debating a topic with conviction and determining valid reasons behind their opinions, you can't videotape that and send it to the state to determine your efficacy. So my point is, how do we measure a teacher's efficacy, dedication, their empathy, and their time? See, what really counts can't be counted on a rubric alone. So we really need to reconsider the system that we evaluate our teachers. And teachers want to be evaluated. They're proud. They're really proud of what they do every day. But they want it to be evaluated in a fair and just way. So, if we think about the word education, the meaning in Webster's dictionary is an enlightening experience. And we really need to keep that in mind when we look at our education system. Because unfortunately, over the years, I don't think that definition has maintained itself. Learning is a joint process between teacher and student. And we need to create an environment of risk-taking and deep, purposeful meaning for our students. We need to get back to what we used to have back in the 80s. Education today has placed too much emphasis on superficial mastery rather than deep thinking. So we're here tonight to share that with you for those of you who maybe came out for some information and just wanted to know a little bit more about how the system has changed over the last few years. Children shouldn't be performing for a score. And if we really want children who are prepared for a global society, we need to be encouraging them to problem solve and to build new competencies. So this is Dr. Rita Pearson. Some of my colleagues may be familiar with her. She's one of my heroes in education because she says if we really want to raise student achievement and raise graduation rates naturally, we need to build the whole child from the inside out. And the number one step in doing so is building self-esteem. So if you have time, in your free time, look up Dr. Rita Pearson on TED Talks. She gives a great scenario, and it's funny and it's fun to watch, but this is what she says. She says, I gave a quiz, and it had 20 questions, and one of my students got 18 wrong. So I put a big +2 and a smiley face on the top of the page. And this really made me think, and she said, and the student said, Ms. Pearson, is this an F? And she said, yes. And the student said, then why did you put +2 and a smiley face at the top? And she said, because you're on the road. You didn't get them all wrong. And I found that to be so inspirational. This is what we need to be doing for our students in the classroom. We need to be reminding them that it's not about a score, and it's about the acquisition of deep knowledge that's really important. And that every child should have the opportunity to grow in their own pace. So, there's power in numbers. We're grateful that you're here tonight with us. And we're committed to working together to generate this transformative change in our education system. And as parents, we have a voice, and we need to make sure that we understand exactly what our children are doing and what's going on in their education every day. We need to take back public education so that it can be guided by the experts in the field. It takes a village to raise a child. Thanks for having us to your village tonight. Mr. David Gamberg,
Take a few minutes.
Superintendent of the South Hold and Greenport School Districts, is going to share with you what's worth fighting for in our education system.